Welcome to this episode of Pearls of the Interior Life, where we're going to talk about being a prepper, but of the spiritual variety. Just imagine that I'm wearing my camouflage. Welcome again to this week's episode of Pearls of the Interior Life. Thank you for making this time for the Lord. I'm very glad to be a part of it as always. Okay, in this Sunday's gospel, Jesus is going to continue the message of detachment. We were looking at detachment last week, right? We're going to look at that again, but he's also going to tell us to be prepared. So we're going to look at that. How does detachment relate to preparedness? Preparedness how? Preparedness for what? And then especially we want to look at the why of detachment and preparedness. And what figures in there is how we don't love ourselves well enough. So we're going to look at how we love ourselves better. Okay. First, on detachment, again, last week in the gospel, we had the wealthy man who was going to store up, he's going to tear down his barns, build even bigger ones because he had so much good stuff. And lo and behold, that night he is called home, or well, he's called somewhere. We don't know where he ended up. But detachment, it got us going on that. And Jesus comes back with that again. And he leads off in this Sunday's gospel with that same message. He says, sell everything you have, give it to the poor, purchase money bags, and fill them with things that will never run out, with the treasures of heaven. It says, my Father is ready to give you the kingdom. What is that? That's the message again of detachment. Get rid of worldly wealth, obviously, prudence and so on. Don't just go and sell your homes. Probably not. But okay, we get that. We get where that's going. Interestingly, he goes and directly into two parables about being prepared. First, he says, a homeowner, if he knew the hour when a thief was going to come to his house, he'd be there, he'd be at the door, he'd be prepared, he'd have a machete, whatever. And then he also likens it to servants who know not when the master is going to return. So they should always be on their best behavior, diligently doing their job, not carousing or other shenanigans. But he goes directly into being prepared. And these two things go together: detachment and preparedness. Detachment and preparedness. How? Well, we're going to go to our prepper analogy. Prepper, popular urban slang for people who are prepared for the zombie apocalypse. Or, look, I'm not making light of that. We should all be preppers in our own way. When you look at the madness of the world and the way globalists and other forces are clearly trying to undermine society. Okay, but our point here is, what is it about preppers? The idea is to be prepared. Prepared with what? Well, in this case, it's just for all of the kind of worldly needs to survive. You want to have food and water and fuel, perhaps ways to defend yourself, whatever kind of gadgets, first aid supplies, money, and so on. All the things that are going to be very hard to find very quickly if things turn bad. What about spiritually? Well, the idea there is to be spiritually prepared for whatever may come. And we don't know what it'll be, but we always know the tests and the trials are coming, big and small. Almost daily, the enemy, the tempter, is coming after us, always trying to weaken us, always trying to chip us down. And then it is just a fact of life that those big trials, those catastrophes, we never know when they're going to come, but we know that they will inevitably come to us, to our loved ones. So what are the spiritual preparations? We want to have deep reserves of what? Of all the virtues, that's for sure. We want to have patience and prudence and moderation. We want to have empathy and kindness, generosity. We want to hopefully grow into the gifts of the Spirit. So we have counsel and fortitude and wisdom and knowledge, all of these good things that will prepare us not just to get through whatever trials come, but to be the light of the world to others. So what is it especially we want to be prepared with? Our relationship with Christ. Aha! Okay, this brings us back to detachment and how they're both different sides of the same spiritual coin. Remember, that's the point of detachment, so we can attach to Christ and obviously then of the things of Christ, the fruits of that relationship with him and with the Trinity. And this brings us to the next point, that it's not just about being able to get through trials. That's a little bit of an imperfect reasoning for that detachment and relationship with Christ. We all have I certainly do a little bit of that, and it's that this is really unpleasant. There better be something I get out of this. It better help me get through trials or so on. But still, that's fine. I mean, it's certainly better than the alternative. It's a great place to start from, that we recognize in kind of that poverty, that, wow, I can't get through trials on my own. I better start preparing now and getting used to really seeing Christ as my rock in all things, so that I am ready. Even better then, though, is when that grows into just that general desire of preparedness. For what? For mission. The Jesuits, when they used to be a real spiritual force, they always had that objective of preparedness or readiness for mission. That we don't know what God's going to ask of us, but we're ready to go on out. Abraham, when God calls him, his first response is just ready. We always quote that. What a great response. We want to be there. We don't want it just to be words. Yeah, I'm ready, but then I'm going to collapse like a house of cards at the first challenge that I have with people not receiving me or having difficulties in the world or my own failings and so on. No, I want to stay ready. I want to be able to back it up. I want to have been a prepper. I got loads of gas and food and first aid kit and so forth. That's where we want to operate from. And in fact, we should desire greatness for ourselves. And that's not at all arrogant or egotistical. It's magnanimous. We should desire to be the greatest person that we can possibly be. This is the classic St. Maximilian Kolbe statement. He says, I want to be a saint. I want to be a great one. Now, there you go. That's the kind of ambition that we should all have. Now we come to the crux of it in terms of loving ourselves. We should desire this greatness. We should, but we don't. And why? Because we don't love ourselves well enough. We actually desire lower things for ourselves, base things, worldly things. Aha! See, this is where attachment comes in. These attachments, remember we said from St. John of the Cross, these tethers. A tether for a bird, it doesn't have to be a giant chain, even a little string will do to tether it. These things that we're attached to, they keep us from soaring, from being who we're supposed to be, from loving ourselves perfectly. And it's important that we get past this, because if we don't love ourselves perfectly, we can't love others perfectly. We're called to love others as we love ourselves. And we've all seen this. This is the world of enablers. When you find like-minded people that we're all willing to be miserable together. But yet there's that facade that we're supporting one another, we're affirming one another. No, we're all holding each other down, holding each other back. So we want to have that beautiful purity of intention to desire greatness. Here's kind of two extremes of how this often plays out in not loving ourselves well. First, we can often be too easy on ourselves. Oh, well, I mean, come on. That's just for saints. That's just for cloistered nuns and monks and perfect people. I can't do that. And we set the bar too low. This is where Pope Benedict made that statement. Life isn't about comfort. Life is about greatness. Okay, he's echoing St. Maximilian Kolbe. And sainthood, greatness is for all of us, each in our own way. So on the one end, we can be too easy on ourselves, and it leads to a kind of sloth, spiritual sloth, not willing to give the best of ourselves. On the other end, we can be too hard on ourselves. And here, this is the sin of pride, where we get down on ourselves. If we haven't met the bar. Oh, man, yeah, I'm just no good. See, I can't do that. And discouragement sets in. And what happens here, St. Teresa of Avila talks of this and says, we get discouraged because we think we ought to be more than we are. We think we ought to be more than we are. And the first time we go out and we try to do something great and we hit failure, well, that's it. And see, I should have been better than this. Why couldn't I do whatever it may have been? Well, no, of course, because we're all hopelessly broken without Christ. But that's when that humility needs to come in and say, I can't do this, but I know someone who can, and with him I can do it. And we pick ourselves up, brush ourselves off, and we forge ahead. So when we start detaching then and perfectly desiring to be prepared to grow in relationship with God and in virtue, so we're ready for all things, it gets easier and easier now. And now when the trials do come, or when the opportunities do come, it becomes very natural. We're not thinking anymore, okay, I'm going to grip my way through this because God will be angry at me otherwise. And that's not the worst place to operate from. But even better is just stepping into it, because more and more we just realize, wow, this is what I'm created to do. This is what I'm growing into. And as we advance along that path, eventually, as we get rid of the detachments, all there is that availability, because that is what we are created for. It doesn't make any sense to do anything else. And in fact, we have a word for that, and that is beatitude. That is the life of beatitude. All of the individual beatitudes that Christ gives us in the Sermon on the Mount basically get wrapped up in the overall beatitude of just being available to God, for his will to be our will, for us to be detached and prepared for whatever comes our way, because that is the joy and the glory of living. So with that, I wish you a week ahead of growth in detachment, growth in preparedness. Let's go forth as spiritual preppers, and I look forward to being with you again.